Now, the excitement is absolutely palpable right here at Studio Titus this week as we build up to the biggest game of the year. Now, forget Anzac Day, forget Dream at the time at the G. We're talking St Kilda versus Port in, where is it?
Shanghai.
Ningbo? Shenzhen?
Ningbo. You're just naming random places in China.
It's Shanghai, is it?
You know China quite well too, so this isn't your ignorance. This is, you just don't actually know where in China it is.
I knew they were playing in China, but
it's where the AFL head office in China is.
Yeah, I know they're about to open a new office in
Shanghai as well.
At the stadium. Is it going to be in the bowels of that stadium?
I don't know.
Or in one of the tents
in
behind the marquee where all the crowd go.
Are you heading over? You'd be
No, I'm not heading over there. My wife's actually over there at the moment.
You mentioned your wife was in China, and have you suggested she head along?
Well, I did suggest she head along, although I did think if Port Adelaide are playing, she better not be getting any text messages from Jack
Watts.
Jack Watts, no. But no, I did suggest that she go along to the footy there, and she said, I wouldn't go see Port and St Kilda if they were playing in Melbourne.
I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't watch St Kilda or Port if it was happening at the Oval outside your house and you could watch from your comfort of your living room. Still would shut the blinds.
So are you excited about this game on Sunday?
No, God, no.
I'll tell you what, the Terracotta Warriors are showing more excitement than most people.
I've said it before, China makes sense from a Port Adelaide point of view on getting some dollars out of sponsorship deals. And look, there would be nothing I'd love more than if we converted China to our great game. Yeah. But I just can't see it. I mean, it's one of these things where I'd be very happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's like basketball. I mean, 20 years ago, I don't think there was a basketball court in China. And now it's one of the biggest markets in the world.
I know, but you got Americans, like, power of cultural power is so big. Ours, playing one game there and then it's, I mean, is it, to my knowledge, is it all the games broadcast all the time? I know Port talked about some of this, but it's not like it's being shown on the main channels or anything like that. So
LeBron James going over there or promoting it in China, it's
a huge story.
It's got a little bit more to it than,
There would be there would be almost 1 billion Chinese that wouldn't even know this was happening in China. When if the NBA was there
and the rest, exactly,
it would be a huge story.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy to be completely proven wrong.
Well, in the short term, I don't think you will be.
No,
in the next.
I mean,
week.
there was no one more shocked than me that St Kilda couldn't conquer New Zealand. We can't even conquer Western Sydney and Gold Coast, and we're suddenly heading off to China.
We're heading off to Shanghai.
We haven't even conquered Australia.
No.
Talk about getting it. It's a bit like, don't invade Russia while the Western Front still lies.
It's just getting ahead of yourself a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, or as I like to call it, the Greater Western Front. It's a busy time at the moment because I got an invite yesterday, which I am going to go on to, which is the second Adam Goods documentary. There's a preview screening I'm going to go see. So this is the Stan Grant one.
Right.
There's two.
This is not the one that the AFL watched last week with all a lot of CEOs.
No, there's sort of two Adam Goods docos coming out, and they're both quite different. I haven't seen either of them yet, but I think I'm next Thursday I'm going to go see the Stan Grant one, and then someone's trying to organise for me to see the other one. The first one is apparently very focused on the booing incident and the media reaction, and apparently it just uses basically a few interviews, but a lot of the clips of what people like Eddie Maguire, Shane Warne, Alan Jones said, and what other people reacting to it.
Edit them together and give you an absolute.
Apparently, it's very about the
right
media.
Between the eyes.
It's apparently about, and it's apparently like it makes what people who have seen it have told me is Eddie comes across just horrendously. Warne and Alan Jones, and a couple of the others of that ilk, Sam Newman, come across looking just like so bad.
And the Stan Grant one is this more an
and Gillen
overview
looks in the first one just the AFL and Gillen looked like more hopeless than bad. They just look like hopeless.
Last week, a number of the people who those big names who did see it, I think the word confronting was used by most, and I thought, you know why it's probably confronting for a lot of these guys, because they're absolutely seeing a mirror to themselves, and they didn't quite like what they saw.
Well, there was, from what I've been told, and a lot of people now are not on the AFL Commission, but when the Goods thing happened, I had some insight into it because I was going up. I was purely by chance. I was booked, and I'm really not trying to make me be in the middle of the story because I'm very much was not even slightly involved. But I was on the just by chance. I was up in Sydney doing a Sydney Swans president's function.
Yeah.
The week Goods sat out.
So
I was just an observer at ground zero a bit of how the Swans felt about it, who were furious. And then, but what was really interesting to me was, talking to quite a few different AFL people, the sense I got was, I think Gillen did get it at the time, and he's apologised since they didn't act swifter, but this was when Mike Fitzpatrick was still there as chair. There was a real divide at commission level of whether this was racism and needed to be addressed at the strongest possible thing, or whether this was just what happened in the game and it was all about Adam Goods supposedly
that's how it always struck
being
me.
So that was the AFL was split on it.
Yeah, as being an outsider, I mean, I observe fairly closely, but very much an outsider on the whole thing. But it seemed to me that there was very much within the heart of the AFL and even commission level. It was like, okay, this will either blow over, or B, everyone just get over it.
Yeah,
there seemed to be that.
No, they were very divided.
It appeared very much that was the case.
There was very much a group that thought Goods basically bordered on himself.
Yeah.
And there's another group that were like, that's nonsense. Like, what's he done? He's just talked about Indigenous issues from someone who has a pretty good perspective. Like, I think Adam Goods has a good perspective of what it's like growing up Indigenous in Australia than, say, Shane Warne does.
Yeah, or Mike Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, that's right. So, when Adam Goods is a very articulate, smart guy, but has grown up Indigenous in Australia saying this is what the experience is like, I tend to think he's more of an expert on this than me. The Stan Grant doco, which is the second one, is less about the booing and the footy journey and more about just Goods' life and about the issue, So, but apparently they're both amazing. Everyone who's watched them says they're kind of. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing them and giving views on them. But I think they're going to really blow up.
To hearing your reviews on them next week, Margaret.
We'll do a David and Margaret. But I think that's going to really blow up again. That's going to be a big issue.
Really?
Oh yeah, the AFL were just like, I don't think panicked or whatever, but they're very aware it's going to be a big deal.
Would they be glad if these docos had never seen the light of day or somebody?
I think there's an element like every organisation. If you ask them, they'd say anything that portrays them in an even slightly negative light. If you could say, would you prefer this didn't happen? They'd say yes. But I think there's also a bit of like, well, this has happened and it hasn't. I think in some ways the films provide an opportunity for the AFL and footy fans to kind of wrestle with this again, because it was never really settled to my mind. It just happened Goods that finished up in the game, was sort of driven out in a way. And so to me, it's a great unfinished chapter in Aussie rules history that, has not been settled. I mean, the thing that drives me mad about this, and I know it's a minority, like I know the vast majority of Australians are not actively going out of their way to be like this, but, the thing I always felt with Adam Goods, the thing that always stuck with me was two inconsistencies. One, first people were saying it's nothing to do with racism. We're booing him because he stages for free kicks. And I was like, okay, let's assume that's true. Then why isn't Joel Selwood being booed out of the game?
Yeah. It was always a pretty lame excuse to me.
Yeah,
if that's it.
Yeah, then fine, really. But then boo everyone else that seizures. I mean, there's been Indigenous and non-Indigenous players that have got a reputation for that, and I don't see them getting the reaction Adam Goods get. Yeah. Another one was people were sort of like, well, he got very uppity and telling us how to live our lives and very critical, and we didn't like that, and he spoke out on issues and sort of brought it on himself a bit. And I'm like, okay, then why is Eddie Betts copying racist stuff on a regular basis? Because he couldn't get a guy who is more beloved and liked and less outspoken in a way. Like to my knowledge, I haven't heard Eddie Betts speak much on these issues at all. Like he's always just struck me. I know he has occasionally said a bit because around, Indigenous around and things like that. But to me, he's been a guy that you couldn't get less, just wants to play footy and entertain.
It seemed to me,
and he cops it. So
with Goods, there was an unspoken thing amongst, again, I'll say not a majority of people, but a certain people that he was like getting above himself or above his station.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's just absurd.
I think that happens. I think a big bit of that happened because he was an Indigenous man and he was speaking about those issues, and it makes people often feel uncomfortable because there's often a lot of truth in what he was saying. People never like truth. There's that line in The Big Short, that Michael Lewis book, where he overheard a guy say, the truth is like poetry and everyone hates poetry. And it's kind of true. Like you get a bigger reaction if what you're saying is true than if you're just sort of talking about. So there's a big issue, I thought, with that, like that sort of happening and stuff. But you get it even some non-Indigenous players who just talk about any public issue. Yeah. There is this element of you're an athlete,
you're
shut
a footballer.
up.
Shut up, exactly.
So, you know, even if I think...
And it's like, I mean, journos or commentators who delve into politics or anything like that, there's still very much a, stay in your lane kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
Across the board. And footballers and other professional athletes, very much so.
Yeah.
It's like we pay our money to watch you run around and kick a footy.
Yeah.
But we don't pay our money to hear your opinions on it.
Yet if it's an opinion everyone agrees with or something that you never hear boo. So that's the other funny thing about it. Like, we're all mad. Well, getting back to what footballers do best and what we more focus on, Daisy Thomas
Here we go.
last Friday night was at a charity function.
He's having a good trot at the moment, Daisy,
and
isn't he?
Depending on who you believe, there's sort of a couple of stories about this. One is one version, which I think was Daisy's version, as we're going from Chris Judd told on Footy Classified, and I think the club have said is, and Daisy has told the club, I had 2 glasses of either wine or 2 drinks. I don't know what exactly they were. So I wasn't inebriated. And so there's this argument, well, it's still not a good look because you're playing Sunday. Yeah. The other version, which Caroline Wilson was saying she's heard, and a few others seem to say is more likely, is he had a lot of drinks, got in an altercation with another former ex-footballer.
Robbie Warnock.
And generally seemed to have made a bit of a fool of himself. And then on Sunday had one of the worst games he's had of probably his career. Had about, it was in the teens, low teens in terms of possessions. At this stage, we don't really know who to believe.
There's Carlton today, as we speak, we're probably involved in the investigation.
Carlton have said, we're after being told by, I think, Caroline Wilson and a few others, I think he's told you a bit of nonsense. I'm just saying if there's any update while we talk.
Yeah. It's always, it doesn't matter whether it's a footballer caught in this situation or a rugby league player caught drink driving or just anyone.
Yeah.
It's always, I had 2 drinks. That's always, that's the admission.
Well, that's what I always tell everyone. I've just had 2.
It was like that woman who owns the fashion label a while ago who was driving on the rims of her Range Rover. She'd run into a wall and blown out 2 tyres.
Yeah.
Apparently she'd had 2 glasses of Shardy. That's been pretty strong Shardy.
That's right. Big glasses. The thing here that seems to be saying of that I find interesting is they're still saying the one is Carlton are so bad at the moment that you won a 9, you had a terrible game on Sunday. So they talked about on Footy Classifieds the optics, which is one of my favourite. Yeah, no one says the look of it. This is this thing where we had perfectly good phrases
and words. And Hutchie,
they said
Caro last night. They used that phrase, the optics, about 20
I felt like
times.
I was at Specsavers.
Exactly.
It was, I love when people just have words that you go, we had lots of simpler, better words than this, and you just created like the look of it. Perfectly fine.
Getting pissed 2 days before a game, it's a bad look.
Yeah, it's a bad look.
No, it's the optics.
Now, the thing is, I don't know whether the thing about it, he's playing Sunday. He's at a charity event. Once again, everyone goes, well, there's a lot of people like Tom Brown and that I saw saying, hey, he was raising money for charity.
It was a charity event.
And you go, it's like the Warren thing, right?
He's drinking
because you're doing something for charity, right? Isn't a free pass to behave however you like. I'm not talking about just Dale Thomas here, but you do charity for charity's sake, not to be able to say, I'm a great bloke because I did charity. Yeah. or you should give us a pass on the bad things we did because we were doing it for good intentions. You kind of go, no, charity is just charity. It's great that you do it. Good on you, but it's not. Yeah. So if you got out drunk and got in an altercation, I don't care if he's at a charity function or at, the Hells Angels clubhouse. I mean, you kind of, where they're at is just so bad, Carlton, at the moment.
Well, so do you reckon Daisy is getting towards the end of his career? He's taken the big pay cut to have another season.
Yeah.
Do you reckon he just doesn't give a stuff anymore?
Well, I mean...
He's just, bugger this.
When you think about it, I mean, why would he? I mean, they're 1-9. They're not going to...
They're not going to suddenly turn around.
Yeah, so... And let's say there is a big difference. Say he got completely written off and got in an argument and behaved like a fool all night. Well, that's bad.
Yeah. If
he did have like 2 beers or 2 glasses of red... I mean, he's not injured. I mean, really, it's 2 glasses of red on a Friday night when you're not playing till Sunday.
It's going to have no difference
and he wasn't
whatsoever.
out. I mean, you're worse if you don't get any sleep. But I can't. I think sometimes with players, we treat them like absolute children, and I don't know. Sometimes you do need 1 or 2 drinks to just de-stress. Yeah. Like, would you prefer they hovered around being stressed and out of their minds all the time? Like, the only reason we all drink is as an outlet to take the stress.
Nobody likes the taste. And it goes back to your theory that all footballers should be kept in a stable.
Well, it's like that, like we kind of... So I don't know whether to be outraged about this or not, because on one level I go, well, if it was just 2 drinks and then he went home and there wasn't an altercation, as he says, then I go... I couldn't give a rat's, to be honest. It's like the Stephen May one.
Case, it's like Stephen May. But I was going to say, how do we know about Daisy? How did the story surely wouldn't have got out unless somebody saw him drinking?
Well, I think a lot of people said, and this is what Caroline Wilson was intimating, is that there was a lot of people who saw everything go down, and he was like drinking a lot and quite out of control, and then got in this altercation. Yeah. So that was...
Well, that's right.
But then he says, I just had a couple of drinks. Now, I don't know what's
surely
true.
It won't be that hard to find out. If not the full, complete, unfettered truth, they'll at least get fairly close to it, surely.
It's funny, though. This is like the least of Carlton's problems. It's sort of like, I mean...
Well, you know who should be getting pissed on a Friday night before the game is Brenton Bolton. He's the one who needs to, relax.
He looks like... Remember when you'd look at Neil in those press conferences and he looked like a broken man? Yeah. Bolton's starting to have that, like... You just look at him and he's just like, I can't reach these guys. This is ridiculous.
Very much in the game against St Kilda last week. Once St Kilda sort of jumped 2 or 3 goals ahead, he had that broken, that's the word for it, actually. Yeah. You're right, broken look.
It's a broken, haunted look.
Yeah.
It's like me after any date. Just wondering where it all went wrong.
Well, it's like your date's look.
Well, that couldn't have gone any worse. It's that look.
She was broken halfway into the night. She's sitting there just...
I tell you what, she definitely drank more than 2 drinks.
Waving for another bottle of Shiraz.
Yeah. You're paying for this, right? So I kind of... Anyway, it's just another it's just another nail in Brendan Bolton's coffin, I reckon.
You've got to feel for him a bit there. I mean,
It's the gift of Mick Malthouse that just keeps giving.
I mean, you think of Bolton, you think, well, if I was him, it's hard enough without senior players getting on the grog 48 hours before we run onto the ground.
I know. There's nothing, there's nothing there that's... I can't see where Carlton... The thing that's the most damning for Carlton, and I love that there's a Twitter account for this, the fact they traded the number 1 pick to Adelaide. There's a Twitter account that just updates you on what Adelaide's pick, or Carlton, the pick Carlton now have is worth, which I think is now 12th. Yeah. So they've got Stocker and the 12th pick effectively, and Adelaide's is 1, and it keeps updating if there's any change to that after each win or loss. And you look at it, that's where the most damning thing about Carlton, and not Brendan Bolton per se, but the whole club, is in their mind, against their own measurements, to do that trade, they obviously thought they were going to be a lot better this year. They did not think they were going to be rusted on to the bottom of the ladder.
There's no
so
question
against their own, and Bolton said this week, we're going to stick to this strategic plan that we've got. And you're like, mate, the strategic plan's is like 5 wooden spoons over the last, before his time too, but you're rusted onto the bottom. Every other club has had at least 3 wins. You've had 1. And you've given away your number one
draft pick, which is
now with
number 1,
which you obviously thought you were going to be. I reckon they thought they might finish like as high as 10th.
Yeah,
that's what they were thinking. So they thought that wouldn't be worth. And I think that would be worth like maybe 10 or 11th or something.
And number 12.
Yeah, that's what they thought.
The gamble, but yeah, and at the moment, as you say, the number 1 pick is what they've given up. And at best, even if they come good a bit in the second half of the season, it's still number 2 probably.
You can't see them coming out better than the other teams that are above them, that are their competitors for the wooden spoon. Melbourne.
Yeah.
Now, Melbourne are going to get a lot of stars back. Melbourne are rubbish, but Melbourne are going to get a lot of stars back and probably not. They're going to probably win more. They've got these teams
win a few more games
than Carlton.
Yeah.
The Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, and
the Gold Coast Suns. They got 3 wins.
Yeah.
They're already 2 wins ahead. And this is the thing. The Suns have won me over this year. They were meant to have the worst list in the history of time. They put in effort better than any of those bottom sides. Yeah. Like if Melbourne or North put in the effort, or Carlton, I reckon all those teams have better lists than Gold Coast, but none of the effort and heart of Gold Coast. Like what Stu's done up there is this year, getting rid of the players that don't want to play. They were really good against Geelong.
Yeah.
I said in the knee-jerk reaction, the difference was Geelong had the firepower of a battleship and Gold Coast are 3 blokes sitting in a tinny.
Yeah.
But they still,
But they were rowing pretty hard.
Yeah, they were rowing really hard. They stuck with them for 3 quarters.
So, Gold Coast will probably win another couple of games at least.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Well, they're going to beat Carlton.
That's enough to
that's right.
The final nail.
So what's this strategic plan? Like, at what point do you go, this isn't a strategic plan? And I mean,
who's behind it? Was Sauce behind it? Was Steve Silvani? It was
Silvani and because a decision like that, the board would have been aware of everyone at the club.
And
like
Chris Jardy's a director.
He's the football director. You don't chart, so they obviously all thought they were further ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't just on a whim, on a spur of the moment on draft night.
Which is the most damning thing of Bolton's coaching, because if the club all think at a high level that this list is better than where it is, and that trade seems to suggest that, then the fact they're where they are. And you and I were talking before we came on air about this, and this is the thing that's really starting to get me, is all the clubs that talk about rebuilding phases, but doing a rebuild are rubbish. Melbourne and Carlton are the 2 prominent examples of teams that have talked long and hard, like they're in the NBA, about rebuild. We're in a rebuilding phase. We're rebuilding through the draft.
Yeah.
In the NBA, you can draft a LeBron James and your fortunes are going to turn around pretty quickly. I mean, I know the Lakers didn't do that this year, but it's towards the end of his career. But if you draft a superstar, you're going to be a lot better. It doesn't work. It's never worked in footy.
No.
It's never worked. Like and
you're quite right. The teams that have openly talked about their rebuilding, at what stage does that rebuild? When do you get the keys to the house?
Yeah.
That rebuild?
When's it in lock-up phase even?
Even lock-up stage. I mean, they're continually rebuilding and then somebody knocks off all the tiles out the back.
But I think rebuilding is kind of sends this message from the president down that we're not expecting you to win. It's okay if you don't win because we're not at that point yet. And I think what happens is once you get that mindset of it's okay not to win because of where we're at, it's very hard to change that mindset that's become ingrained over years in the players. Like go, right, now we're not in rebuild. Like I thought it was really telling when Alistair Clarkson said we're a middle of the road side. He didn't say, and that's okay because we're rebuilding or we're in the next phase. He was furious. He said, we're a middle of the road side. He got stuck in, you got no sense that he was like,
that was in any way acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's what you say. The rebuilding thing seems to be, it ingrains a bit of a loser's mentality in the whole organisation, I reckon.
That's right, I reckon, yeah.
And as you say, and it takes a fair while to turn around, whereas the good clubs, as much as we all like to hate Hawthorn and what have you, They simply refuse to accept. And Sydney have been the perfect example. When have they ever bottomed out?
No,
and had to rebuild.
Even now this year they're bottoming out, but they don't talk about it. They're annoyed that this has happened. Yeah. This is not acceptable in their mind. We're a professional football club. The only thing we're measured on is thing we're measured on is winning. We're paying you guys. You're all AFL standard footballers. So this talk of you not being ready to win is just. Even if the club at a high level knows that that's the phase, we're at the phase where we're not going to win 20 games a season or 12 or 14 or whatever, but you don't let everyone know that. You go, we expect to be competitive. There isn't, it's become this horrible Americanization of the game.
Rock bottom,
Yeah. And I've
go to rehab then, there should be an intervention.
I know, it's just, I look at Carlton and Melbourne's rebuilds and I just go, then you look at Brisbane's supposed rebuild. Yeah. They haven't talked as much about, I haven't heard Fagan talk about rebuilding. He just talks about getting better.
And look, you mentioned Stewie Dew up at the Gold Coast. If ever there's been a side that at the end of last season when they lost Stephen May and Kolodashny and
Lynch.
And Lynch, of course, Tom Lynch. If ever there was a side, as you said, that was supposedly got the worst list in the history of football, if ever there's going to be a side that needed a rebuild, it'd be that. But Stewie Dew, I can't recall him saying we're rebuilding. They've just got on with the job with what they've got.
Yeah, that's right.
And they took a couple of some good players in the draft. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But they haven't quite stamped their authority on it yet. Rosie and King and these guys.
Yeah.
But they're getting there. But
Freo too have talked a lot about rebuild. They're in a rebuild.
Yeah.
And Ross Lyon's doing the rebuild, and you look at it and just go.
And they're still not much good. You still don't know what you're going to get.
I just think it has this. You give people an out.
Yeah.
It's a bit like someone says to you, this thing's due next Monday, but if you can't get it to me next Monday, get it to me next Wednesday. Well, when's that person going to get it to you?
Yeah.
Next Wednesday. No one ever goes, right, I'll overachieve for you if you've given me an out. But if you say it's due Monday or that's it, people go...
It reminds me of all my years at uni. Whenever an assignment's due
if you could
Monday,
get an extension, you would.
Due on the Monday, come Sunday night, you'd start writing it.
That is the thing about these rebuilds. It's like a uni student constantly getting extensions.
Yeah, getting extensions. And you'd go and you'd plead with your lecturer, and sometimes they'd let you do it, sometimes they wouldn't.
Talking about these rebuilds, so Big's news this week, of course, was Brad Scott. The club announced that he'd stopped coaching the club in 2016. They just made it official now. It is he is finally out. They've got rid of him. It was a strange thing because it kind of seemed to.
It was very weird, I've got to say.
He didn't tell his manager. He didn't tell the players. Didn't tell his family. Then they sort of intimated it had leaked. But I'm like, hang on, no secrets. If you're smart, no secrets in footy. So the minute you guys made the decision, you tell anyone,
it's going to come out.
You got to go and just announce it. But look, it was done as well as I guess it could do. What I don't get is they've got rid of Brad Scott. Fine. What's their next plan?
Well, Well, who's the which one of the Shaws is the
Reece Shaw is going to be the caretaker.
The caretaker coach.
They've said that
Is he going to be any good? Because you look at all the Shaws, and communication's never been one of their strong suits.
The thing I think about, it's a bit like becoming Prime Minister, right? Someone can have all the views that person's going to be great one day as a Prime Minister or as a head coach. Until you get into that job, which is a lonely job, and until you do it, it's a bit like having children. Until you do it, you don't really know what it's like. You can theorise and think you'd be good at it.
Everybody tells you, but you don't know.
But until you're in it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And so we don't know. You never know someone's going to be a great senior coach.
Yeah.
You don't know until they're there.
I'll just say on the record now, I'll be surprised if Reece Shaw is.
Yeah, that's right.
But good luck to him.
He played under Roos. He's played under Longmire.
They'll probably win this week. And again, North, where are they on the rebuild?
Well, they were sort of saying they weren't rebuilding, and now they're saying they might have to do a rebuild.
See, this is another thing. What's the difference between a rebuild and a top-up? Because North were topping up last year with blokes like Pollock and these guys. But as you say, they didn't describe it as a rebuild.
But a rebuild to me is you strip everyone down and almost attempt to bottom out.
Yeah.
Not officially tank, but you don't care if you finish down the bottom because you want draft picks.
Yeah,
and
you want 1 or 2 or 3.
When sometimes I think it's more about just keep getting slightly better because the more you're looking like you're going to play it, like the number one thing for if you are going to probably play finals in the next few years, players will join you.
Oh, exactly.
Like, so I don't know if bottoming out is always like the draft is a crapshoot half the time. Like the idea it's some sure thing that you go and get 3 players through the draft and you're going to be, it can be 5 years till those players get any good.
Look at when Melbourne, allegedly didn't tank. And they got the picks 1 and 2, and they took Scully and Trengo.
Yeah.
Look where they are.
It made no difference.
Yeah, it made no difference whatsoever.
So they're going to do this now. North Melbourne have declared they've got the resources to chase the best coach in the land.
Oh,
now
they've been saying this sort of thing for years.
What does that mean?
Yeah. They've got money in the bank to pay a big contract. Or, Brad Scott apparently was on $800,000 a year. I mean,
it is the war chest that keeps coming up.
Yeah, the mythical North Melbourne war chest.
You know what Brad Scott said as he left? Said that the pursuit of they're pursuing Josh Kelly at one point.
Yeah.
Dustin Martin at another point.
Was the other.
He said that was a board level thing, not him, and that it was a massive distraction to the club and to the list, which is kind of damning. But I thought that a thing of going out and saying, we are going to get these players or we are going to do everything to get them.
And we have a war chest.
It's just setting yourself up for absolute failure.
Yeah. And as soon as they didn't get Kelly and as soon as they didn't get Martin, it just, I reckon it took 10% off their value as a destination club.
I just made them look silly, and then...
If there's such a thing as a destination club,
It's like, it's... You don't go out and say, well, I'm going to marry Scarlett Johansson.
Well, no.
Because then you look kind of silly when you can't do it. Like
even I'm going to have a crack at Scarlett.
And we're pretty confident.
You're reasonably confident it's not going to work.
She doesn't even know who you are and never going to meet you. But, North was so it made them appear a bit like this desperate kind of guy that's sort of is talking big and delivering nothing.
Yeah, it's a bloke leaning at the bar, checking out the good-looking chicks on the dance floor, but never going to have a dance himself.
I think going and trying to get top-level stars is always a bad idea because you have to give away a lot for them and they cost a lot. I mean, in some ways, I hate to say it, but Collingwood topping up, getting Treloar, Hoskin Elliott, a few of those GWS players that were not yet amazing stars.
Levi Greenwood, I never rated him, but he's been a pretty handy player.
But they got him on the up. They didn't wait till they didn't go after Collingwood. To their credit, didn't go. Let's get Nat Fife.
Yeah,
it's a bit like getting Chris Judd. What does getting Chris Judd really do for Carlton? I mean, you know what I mean. That was like talk about putting all your eggs in one basket. I mean. He was a great player and all that, but footy doesn't work like that. You need 5. You'd be better off to have 5
they did get
B+ players.
Environmentalists for the Visi organisation is what they got.
Yeah, if you measure it by that, I mean, environment saved.
And they've now got an embattled football director is what they've got.
Shane wrote in, Bill Shorten needs a job. North Melbourne needs a new inadequate leader. Just saying.
Could Bill Shorten lead them to lose the unlosable grand final, perhaps?
Well, Bill Shorten's sort of going to be the John Hewson of the next generation, isn't he? It's going to become the,
That losing the unlosable phrase.
Yeah.
It's going to take him a fair while.
It's like a reverse Bradbury, isn't it?
It is.
It's like falling over when you're leading by 10 laps.
And as you say, doing a reverse Bradbury.
Yeah.
You're
one of the guys that fell over.
You're one of the blokes who fell over on the ice, the favourite. Yeah.
So the other thing that was interesting, and I thought this was very Brad Scott, talk about going out on brand, is he at 3/4 time sort of lined up David King, but only brushed past him, but yelled some obscenities, I think, at him.
You didn't need to be an expert, lip reader.
I could just make out a lot of swearing.
You flaming coot or some word.
Oh, it was that direct?
Words to that effect.
See, it's kind of interesting here. So David King, a great North Melbourne champion of that club, but
a couple of premierships, I think.
And was a very good player.
He was.
Like people forget that because they now listen to him commentate and wonder what's going on.
He was a number 34. He was a very good.
He was a very good player, very handy player, better than handy. Now, Scott famously cleaned him up in one game, but at the same time, so they've never really got along. But King has been highly critical of Scott, which I don't think has actually been unfair. Right? There's been a lot to be critical of Brad Scott over the years. I think Brad Scott has been a master of excuses that didn't help the club. Like a lot of things he's said, like when he called the umpires basically cheats and all this sort of stuff. I remember he accused them of what's his name saying stuff, and so there's been and had to then apologise to the umpires for making claims that weren't true. Sure. And he made a lot of like the roof being closed or open and all this sort of stuff. So I thought there's a lot of times where Scott did not handle himself well, and then the complete. I mean, this season has been an abject disaster. If Carlton didn't exist, the heat would have been on North a lot more than it was. I think they just read that it was going to come on them and moved quickly. But so one of the things when they asked Brad Scott why he singled out King and whenever go, Brad gave this, which I always hate. He gave this sort of smarmy answer about he's not going to comment too much on it, but then said some vague, insulting things, and then
he's a master of I'm not going to comment, but then I'll comment.
But then acting like the media were bringing up. So hang on, you almost ran through him. You sent a miss, and then yelled at him. What do you think's going to happen? It's your last day coaching. Like, it's a terrible look for you. Yeah. Like, you look like an unhinged maniac, doing it. So then he says, one of the things, though, when he was asked then again on another press conference he seems to have had more final press conferences than anyone I've ever seen. He said that one of the things Brad said about David King is, King had never been around the club and not helped out in any way as a legend of the club he should have, and that he'd been asked once to present a jumper to a debutant and had refused. And this was so Brad raised that. King's come back and said he's agreed with everything Brad said about him being highly critical and everything. Yeah. Because he has been. And you can't deny, you have to say that on this, King's been fairly accurate because there was a lot to be critical of. But he said that the idea that he declined to give a first game player just his jumper for just sort of no reason was inaccurate. He said when it happened, Brad rang him on a Friday night. This is not this Friday, but back when, about the jumper, and said, I want you to do this on Sunday. So Friday night said, on Sunday, I want you to present a jumper to this, new player, debutant, which I don't think we've been told who the player was.
When exactly it was.
And King said, I'd been given the weekend off by Fox to go to my daughter's confirmation. And he said, you know what it's like in football? I've missed every one of my kids' functions for 20 years, so I wanted to go to this. And I said, I can't do it. I just can't pull out of the going and seeing his daughter's confirmation. And so he said he thought it was a bit unfair that then Brad used that like he just refused. When I think your daughter's confirmation is a pretty good reason to say no to presenting.
Confirmation, that's a religious thing, isn't it?
It's a Catholic thing. It's when you sort of become a full-blown Catholic and commit to the church and everything. So there's baptism and then you're confirmed.
I'm with Scotty on this.
It's like a jumper presentation for the Catholic Church. It's like baptism is being recruited, but confirmation's when you actually get
being drafted.
That's like being drafted, and then confirmation is like when you pull on the jumper for the first time.
So you're standing in the rooms and somebody important give hands.
You're actually usually a priest. And so that's what it's like. So he had his daughter's jumper presentation. Or he had to go to this. So,
and there was probably red wine involved.
Yeah, that's right. So depending on what one of those is true, depending on but if King's version is true, it just means Brad ends on
even a slightly more soury, silly.
That's
note.
My problem with Brad is he constantly always came across as sour.
Yeah, I tell you, I played golf once in a group behind. He was with him and I don't know who the other blokes were. I'll tell you what, if ever he sprayed one, the club's copped a toss.
Oh, it was the club's fault.
Yeah, it was the club's fault. No, and I'm not kidding on this. Don't get me wrong, he's a pretty good handy golfer. He was belting the ball pretty well. But a couple of times, I saw on a par 3, he put a couple of balls in the drink and his 8-iron went about 30 metres in the air.
And he wasn't happy.
Having said that, it could have been Chris.
That's what I thought. Maybe Chris had coached North to their in the last game as a favour, so they'd win. Gary Ablett has once again tried to get suspended and seems to have finally succeeded.
Will 1 week off be enough time for him to go to the NBA Finals?
I don't know what he was sort of planning on. I mean, I did love that Michael Christian has suspended Gary Ablett, the son of God. But it is amazing. This one was just a pure punch. I liked how even then people going, look, was there enough, was it enough force behind it? I go, you start punching people, and there is no reason to throw a closed fist at someone's face, whether you connect or not. Like I've been strong on this. Even if you swing and miss, I reckon that should be a suspension.
And it wasn't in play with both players running towards the ball or something, and lifting your arm, which is how he got off the first two. This was I
don't think he should have got out of either of those.
No,
to be blunt.
especially I thought the second one was the worst. But this wasn't even involved in play. Play had stopped. And there was a bit of pushing and shoving and a bit of mouthing off. And then
Gary's angry.
The right hand went back.
Do you think he's angry because of all the booing and the Falau stuff? Like he's just playing like someone that's a player that's never been like this suddenly starts being like it every week. You start to go, are they sledging him out there? I'm not trying to provide excuses for him. Just don't know why he's doing it.
I think he's over the whole thing.
Well, I guess at the Gold Coast he never had to work every week. He was sort of a fly-in, fly-out worker.
He did have to carry the whole club, but he doesn't have to do that at Geelong.
Well, he stopped carrying them in the last few years there. So I thought that was bizarre. I think, once again, to me, anything that involves the head, the AFL say the head is sacrosanct, and I start to think they don't know what sacrosanct means by their actions.
Or what head means.
Or possibly both with them. They just heard someone else say it.
Put them both in the same sentence. It goes.
Yeah. Can you find out? Hey Siri, define head and define sacrosanct.
Yeah.
So the thing about it that amazes me is like,
but don't just Google head.
Not on the work computer.
Or clear your history.
Clear your history. The thing I find absolutely amazing about this is like, we keep talking about this till we're blue in the face, but they keep bringing it up. Is like, you take a big swing. So say that one where with Gaff hitting Brayshaw.
Oh yeah.
Say that hadn't connected, he would have just been. There would be no charge, right? Yeah. To me, you start swinging punches near people's heads, elbows like Gary did the first time. Like to me, impact should almost not matter.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not talking if someone goes up and rubs your hair.
Yeah.
There's a common sense application. But if you look at it and go, gee, you were lucky you didn't cop them square. Because if and it was luck. Because when you throw a punch, and you and I have done this a lot. But when you do throw a punch or you see a fight, like it's often just blind luck. Like Gary was lucky with those elbows. You could have easily knocked a bloke out if you caught him at the right point.
You mentioned the Gaff Brayshaw. Even when you see that replay, it still didn't look like the most brutal punch ever thrown.
Yeah, that's right.
And Brayshaw's wearing a mouth guard and still he's spitting his teeth out onto the ground.
Yeah.
And he couldn't eat solid food.
And I just think Gary's been bloody lucky.
Yeah.
Yet the AFL have not cracked down on it. What message do they think this is sending?
Well,
the insufficient force.
Less than 2 years ago that I think Gillen actually said, if you punch a bloke in the head, that's it, you're gone. We're going to crack it down on it.
I think when it comes to the head, force should have... I mean, unless it's like the gentlest of pats, like you go up and pat someone on the cheek, right?
Yeah.
I get that's insufficient. But anything where...
if you pat someone on the cheek, you deserve a punch in the face.
Yeah, well, that's right. But anything like what Gary's done in all three incidences, you just look at and go, no, it's just not part of the game. You can tackle, you can hip and shoulder. If you want to just take your aggression out, there are still plenty of ways. Look at Sydney Stack's tackle on bump on Jack Viney. Like, it's still a brutal game. Yeah. But Gary just was, to me, by the grace of God.
I think you raised a very good point, though, is what's wrong with Gary at the moment? I mean, what is he, 33, 34? He's been playing at that top level for...
And never
over
been
a dozen years, and he's
and
never thrown a punch in his life. Now he's done 3 in 4 weeks.
I just think when you look at it, whether people admit it or not, he had the Israel Folau thing, and he had a lot of the booing, and there's obviously, like, I don't know whether that got to him. I don't know if there's stuff going on in his private life and all that.
Well, he had a beautiful house on the Gold Coast, and now he's back in Geelong. I mean, you know.
You think just the reality's
reality setting.
Or just playing every week's obviously getting to him. But so yeah, I just think the AFL isn't about Gary so much, but they're just all at sea on this thing. Like, you know, I mean, and then so can I read you the funniest line I've heard?
Yes.
Almost all year.
Yeah.
Michael Christian, the match review officer, said with no tongue in cheek, like with a straight face, said, under the guidelines, off-ball intentional strikes don't belong in the game, and they'll be treated accordingly. About Gary Ablett's punch here, and I was reading it. I'd read it like 8 times
to
and
get it.
You know, to go, is he? Oh, I thought this was part of like a comedy festival thing or something. Like, is he serious? I mean, he's.
He seems to take himself very seriously when discussing his decision making in these sort of things.
But they let him off the week before with not even charge. I mean, I know the week before they sent him and he appealed, got a fine. So I know he didn't go away scot-free.
Why didn't Chris bring up that or use that sentence in the first week? You know?
Yeah, I know. There was another one I saw. I can't remember. It was I don't know if it's a current player or an ex-player, but it was someone said it, and I thought it's actually true. They said, if you want to stop back chatting to the umpire, just while we're on the subject of things the AFL cracking down on or not cracking down on, if you back chat an umpire, it's straight away the other team gets a kick from the goal square.
A free kick in the goal square.
I can't remember who said it. Someone said it. I'm not sure if it was Dangerfield or something like that. And I thought, you know what? That's spot on.
Yeah.
Like, there's things you watch how, and this is and the reason I raise that is it's the same with punching in the head. Yeah. If Gary, on the first one, or the elbowing, if he'd have gone, the message would have gone out to everyone. Yeah. But because he got away with quite a few, now it's like, every time.
It's introducing a grey area after they've been talking black and white for the last 2 years.
They love grey, shades of grey. The 50 Shades of Grey is the rule. The AFL rulebook should be called
the official AFL film of 2019.
That's what the rulebook should be called. The 50 Shades of Grey. More like 2,000 Shades of Grey. I think
that might make an appearance in the next knee jerk.
I think it might. 50 Shades of Grey is actually better written than the AFL rulebook. It's got a more logical thread.
It's more nudity.
Actually, I do find the rulebook more erotic.
The head is sacrosanct. Move on.
I tell you what, you just felt last night a shift in the whole balance of the season because the mid-season draft occurred, and hasn't this just changed everyone's fortunes?
It's as you say.
I can see
sometimes the game just demands a massive overhaul, and last night that was it.
Do you think? I think with Carlton and Gold Coast and Melbourne and North getting these picks, surely they're going to shoot into the top 8 now.
Well, they could. Carlton, their rebuild is now complete. Now they've got Josh DeLuca.
Do you think Josh DeLuca probably go in and could win their best and fairest from here?
Josh DeLuca's going, I might rather stay in the waffle.
He comes out and announces he's quitting football.
Maybe he could retire now to give them another pick in the next.
Do you think he's requested a trade already?
But yeah.
Richard Allen writes a good thing in the mid-season draft. Given the mid-season draft was held after round 10 of 23, shouldn't it be called the not quite mid-season draft? It's a fair point. It's the AFL once again. Numeracy skills seem to be a bit off. They can count dollars, but not rounds.
Not rounds.
It's a bit of it's just ability to top up lists with injuries, I guess. It's not a game changer, is it really?
No, well, and a lot of probably the vast majority of the I think there were only 13 players selected last night.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if even one of them actually gets a game this year. So the clubs are just going to warehouse these players and say, especially the youngsters who've never played at the senior level or anywhere near it. I say, well, okay, we've got 6 months now to get them fit and work on them and teach them a few things.
Yeah.
But they're certainly not going to make any difference to the team lists this year. Very few, if any, will probably get a game this year.
Yeah.
You look at Gold Coast, they've got Mitch Reardon, who might be a good young player. He might not be up to it.
Yeah.
But I can't see him playing too many games this year.
No.
And
Campbell Brown said, who did Melbourne recruit? They said he'll be 100.
Dunkley,
he'll be 100 game. He'll be 100 game player.
Yeah, at Melbourne. It's not necessarily a 100 game player anywhere else. But good luck to him, mate.
He'd be a 4 game player.
Well, his old man, Andrew Dunkley, was a very good player at the Swans, and his brother's going all right at the Bulldogs. So.
Coming off Sportsbet paying out punters for backing Bill Shorten early.
They're 2 weeks, but Daisy Thomas level.
I bet Owen Carlton have had a worse 2 weeks than Sportsbet. They said originally they weren't going to be paying out. Basically, they had an online bet which I think it multi-bets which included no player getting more than 40 disposals in an AFL match over the weekend. They voided these multi-bets because they said that Sportsbet had put up the wrong odds higher than they should have been. So they said that they were voiding the bet under their terms and conditions. They sent out a text or a message to whoever had made this bet.
Involved.
When it just said, we apologise, we put the incorrect odds up, and I assume from reading it the players had won at these better odds. Therefore, we void the bets as per our terms and conditions. Now, I don't know how legally, even with their terms and conditions, they're really allowed to even do. I mean, legally allowed to do that under law because it's your fault. It's your job to make sure you put the. I mean, if someone sells me a car at 20 grand and they go, actually, we should have advertised that at 30 grand. Sorry, you have to give the car back and everything. I'm like, sorry.
Well, I know legally. If you're in a store, I mean, I've seen it happen. At Woolworths or Coles, if something is incorrectly labelled, the store has to sell it to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Price.
So so then a Twitter page came up which was called Sport. I love our Twitter accounts just spring up very specifically now. Sportsbet lawsuit said it had inquired with Slater and Gordon to launch a class action. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. And one punter in response posted a screenshot of a multi-bet worth $30,000 in winnings that hadn't been paid out. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but there was a picture of it. The Sportsbet lawsuit account reached over 1,000 followers in just 21 hours of being launched. So Sportsbet argued that they were very much entitled to void the bets under their terms and conditions.
Probably they're right in a legal sense.
Well, perhaps. I mean, I still think...
But you know what? It's the optics.
It's the optics.
The optics weren't good.
I still think, just because they've got it in their terms and conditions, whether that means it's legally enforceable is a different thing, because your terms and conditions should be based on the law, but they're not. Sometimes they just write them for what they'd like, and they can be challenged. Sportsbet has since come out, since this all blew up, because it was in the paper and various things, said they will be paying out customers after being dragged into this betting controversy. They later admitted that they made a rare pricing error and confirmed they would be paying out customers at the correct odds after missing the mark in terms of how this had happened.
They've been missing the mark a bit lately.
In recognition of missing the mark, we're going to reinstate our customers' bets and pay them the correct odds. We apologise to the small number of customers who are impacted. I look at a lot of this, like these betting companies, huge international multinational companies who, the owners of Sportsbet and all these ones like Paddy Power and William Hill and all this and Ladbrokes, huge international companies. So you're no longer dealing with even like individual bookmakers. They're huge corporations now. They have a huge, I've been on a lot of research in this recently. They have their terms and terms of their terms and conditions are give them so much power, and they do things like they rarely kick people off, but what they do is they just keep offering less amounts you can bet. So if you are like amazingly successful, they don't necessarily ban you, but they say we're only willing to take $10 bets from you now. Yeah. So they stack it so in their favour, which is what pushes a lot of people to do the illegal offshore betting because they can get bigger odds and there's bigger pools of money. Yeah. But I've only discovered this the last year or so, and
it's always just baffled by this. That how can they do this? If you bet, you can't go up to a bookie at the races and him, change the odds after the race if you've tipped a roughie.
Well, not at fixed odds betting.
No.
You can if you do other sorts of betting. It's based on the end payouts of the total
seems like
pool.
The dodgiest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it's the way they do it and the power they have and the fact that they just really start to get rid of people who are too successful.
Yeah, they don't want... I mean, from a business point of view, you can understand them not wanting too many successful punters on their books,
I think it depends on how they're successful. Like, if they're just successful, then that's the problem of setting up a...
Yeah, that's the risk you take.
That's a risk you take.
When you're a bookmaker, whether it's a bloke on the rails at Flemington with a white bag around your neck, or you bet 365 that's owned by
get the odds
parent company
right.
In the Cayman Islands.
Like, you need to
that's the risk you take.
That's the risk, and price the odds accordingly.
Yeah.
Like, don't take bets on certain things, but don't take them and then get annoyed and then they're all over the shop.
Crappy ads, like they do.
We're rapidly getting into the Cricket World Cup. In the lead up, Steve Smith scored a
How
century.
far away is the World Cup? I see the ads.
It's only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
I must admit, I haven't looked at the thing because it just seems like we've been building up to it forever. Smith got 116 in a warm-up game against England.
He's in a reasonable amount of form.
He was booed and called a cheat and all sorts of things that went on, which is kind of interesting. A lot of people have said to me, Warner and Smith and Bancroft have done their time.
Yeah.
What they did wasn't great, but they've done their time. Let's move on. And I can see why people would say that. My problem still with Smith, Warner and Bancroft is there are a heap of questions they still have not answered.
Especially Smith and Warner.
Yeah, they just have not come out and been honest or refused to answer questions. And so we don't know. So, if they want forgiveness, sure. And I know they've paid a significant price in terms of sponsorship and all this. But, the fact that they're kind of not revealing, and Cricket Australia add to this, taints it slightly.
Yeah.
But
and it's got to that point, and we've said this numerous times, is that there's no way they're going to tell us all now.
No.
That's gone. It's dead and buried.
But then I think there's always going to be a question mark over them. But interestingly, and we've always sort of known this, Monty Panesar, the former England bowlers, he's had come out and admitted they used to use mints to alter the condition of the ball and assist with the reverse swings. Reverse swing. He said, we all tried to change the condition of the ball because reverse swing was such a huge impact. This was in his autobiography, The Full Monty.
The Full Monty.
When I came into the England side, my job was to prepare the ball for the seamers. They'd say, listen, mate, if we want to bowl with us, it's on one condition. Make sure you don't get your sweaty hands on the shiny side. Well, that's fine. I don't think that breaks the law. But then he said we found that mints and sunscreen had an effect on saliva, and that helped to the ball to reverse. He also said, I might have accidentally caught the ball on the zip of my trouser pocket to rough it up a little.
There's something about Mary style.
Yeah. There was probably a hairline. This was probably a hairline fracture of the spirit of the game, even if the law said you were not allowed to use your uniform. The thing this says to me, right? So a lot of people said Warner, Bancroft, Smith got hung out to dry on something that everyone does, and that it's sort of hypocritical of the other countries to sort of bag them. And that's probably true to an extent, right? All of that.
Yeah.
I've always said on lots of issues when we've talked about them, it's like children. If someone does something bad, which there's no doubt that Bancroft, Warner and Smith did by bringing one level, just bring sandpaper and everything is a step above rubbing it on a mint or on your zip, I reckon. Yeah. But the other stuff's bad too. And then secondly, being so dumb and being caught so easily and then lying about it afterwards and covering up. So they added a lot of petrol to the fire of the whole thing. So they're partly in trouble for being stupid, not just what they did, and a lot of other cricketers have done it. The big problem I had with it is, and Monty adds to this is where the cricket community and cricketers didn't get it. They all went, and I spoke to several cricketers, like current cricketers, that said, we don't get why everyone's carrying on about this. This has been going on forever and has always been happening, and everyone does it. So why is everyone carrying on? And I kind of was like, well, don't you get when people talk about bad culture? That's when people start to see bad things as seen as okay.
Yeah.
And that cricket as a whole has got this view that ball tampering is kind of not that big a deal. That's the problem. Like, that's when we talk about a cultural problem. The fact that England do it don't make us any better. It just means that they're bad as well. You know when like your kids say to you, they do something bad and they go, but so-and-so does it. You go, if your first line of defence is pointing out other people are also doing terrible things, then that's not a defence.
If he jumps off a cliff, will you jump off a cliff? You know?
That's right.
And the thing with the ball tampering,
it doesn't lessen your thing that everyone else. It's like if the banks had all said we're all ripping off our customers, that doesn't make it any better.
No.
If you're the customer that's been ripped off, does it? You don't go, I'm glad I'm one of a million rather than one of 5. That makes me feel so much better.
And the other thing with the ball tampering is, like, since the game began, 200 years ago, bowlers have been using a bit of sweat off there. Everyone's been shining one side of the ball trying to get swing. But there is a difference to when you carry a piece of sandpaper onto the field, hide it in your pocket, and then scrub down one side to keep that side rough.
But why don't they just say no zips on uniforms? So you don't have anything on a uniform that's you've got the ability to rough it against.
And they pretty much do. They wear
how much stuff?
pants.
Yeah, how much stuff do you need to take out in your pockets? Like, I got my car keys and my you know what I mean? Like, I know people say, I got glasses cleaner or something, but fine, you can have a pocket without it. Like, it's not like you're going to look if it drops onto the ground when you're occasionally having to dive for something that you can't find it again. And then why are you allowed mints and everything?
Yeah,
I mean, you just no foreign objects. It's not hard.
Yeah,
like if the game was serious about cracking down on it, go. No gum, no mints, no,
As you say, either empty your pockets as you walk on the field or we get rid of pockets.
Well, have pockets but no zips.
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing. Like, it's not hard to sort of stamp out. You know that the key things are going to be either mints. I mean, sunscreen you can't get around. So there are going to be things that are harder to do.
But the sunscreen could be just with the umpire. If you want some, you go in there and
But you can, if you've got sunscreen on your thing, you can rub your arm on it and all that sort of the ball on it.
Or what you don't want to see is a bloke taking his shirt off and getting the umpire to rub it into his bag. The sunscreen.
But you can. I'm not saying you can always stamp this stuff out. So they're going to be able to put sweat on one side or fine. But if you just limit the excesses, and take away the grey area, and the fact, and I hope this is the lesson a lot of them take is. Nowadays they can have someone who's got a camera on the ball the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you try any of this stuff, I mean, if you were the ICC, you'd say we're going to fund one camera to watch the ball the whole time, and then we're going to upload that on the internet for every cricket fan to be able to go. If any of those you want to
put a camera in the ball, surely they've got to be able to do that these days.
So anyway, that's the World Cup coming up. That's going to be fun watching Australia get booed all the time. It will make it more fun if Australia win, though.
And it's on Channel 9, isn't it, the World Cup?
Well, I know they had kept the Ashes. They got the World Cup. I can't remember. I have not engaged. You might be...
No, I haven't really engaged with it at all because I know it's coming up quicker than I probably thought.
I started to think about it the other day, but it's the first of... I have a feeling
Channel 9 might have the World Cup and they're running it on Gem or something like that. Right. I don't think Channel 7 have got it.
And Foxtel got it as well? I think Foxtel got it.
In any case, I don't think Michael Slater will be doing having a lot to do with
it. Listeners' questions. Adrian March wrote, do you ever think that you and Serge are stuck in a Groundhog Day time loop where the only way to escape is to find the perfect Carlton gag? Hang on, we got this last week.
Is that part of the
It's like Groundhog Day. I thought that was very funny. I was like, when I read it, the first time I read on Twitter I thought, someone sent that last week. And then I went,
thought exactly the same
Groundhog Day.
Thought, we're all thinking the same thing.
Very
nice
well
work,
done, Adrian.
Clever, Adrian.
Well worked.
You're not getting a book, though.
And Tilly's Heel wrote in... not Achilles, Antilles. I did pronounce that right. I wonder if it's after Wedge Antilles, the Star Wars pilot, which I know you would be well across, Serge. When Steve Hocking floats a wild card round, is he A, laying down a smokescreen, B, deliberately trolling fans, or C, just being Steve Hocking? I think you can be all of the above.
All of the above, all three, I reckon. Yeah.
The wild card round, I talked to, I was on Nova the other day, and Jonathan Brown and I had this sort of argument about, not argument, discussion, but we're at different viewpoints. I think the wild card is a pure further Americanisation, which is not always bad because some stuff in American sport is great. But the only reason they're doing this is for money.
Of course.
I think that it's to the 10th. It's a bit like this thing of soon, even at the Olympics, there'll be a medal for every position.
Exactly.
It'll go down to zinc. You know, like, and the podium will have like 10 steps. So everyone gets to go on the podium afterwards or something, you know.
Every
like
Australian athlete will be an Olympic medalist.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's right. Everyone gets a medal. Yeah. You know, it's this thing of like the AFL trying to stop kids keeping score at junior level.
Participation. Yeah,
and what happens? All the kids become great at maths and remembering numbers in their head because they all keep score. Yeah. So it's all it does. Like, there's this human thing of wanting, at some point you have to say, you're not all winners.
Exactly. I mean,
this is the bit about playing competitive sport
and what have you is can't be stamped out by giving the worst performer a reward.
Let me be very clear: you are not all winners. No. That's when I gave that speech at Auskick, people really turned on me. So I said, Jonathan Brown makes a point to me.
What was Brownie's point of view?
Well, we were talking about this on air and off air briefly. Like, it was kind of his view. Which he's made the most articulate argument for it I've heard. Much better than
premiership player.
Much better than the AFL, right? Is he says, like, when you actually look at over the last few years, you know, the difference between 10th and sort of 7th is not that different.
Yeah.
And it would add a bit more interest, but actually that some of those sides who finished in 9th or 10th are actually arguably as good and could come in and challenge, and therefore that's a worthwhile thing that it does cut it off and it provides an extra chance, and the odds are they'll still lose. And if you finish in the top, because I think it's 7th would play 10th and 8th would play 9th is the proposed thing in that bye week
would slot into
and
the
go in. And he said, you know, if you're in the top 6, you still would get that week off, so you still have this advantage over those teams, right?
Yeah. And
I guess it lessens 8th and 9th and make them 7th and 8th and no longer straight into the proper finals. If you think of it like adding those, it's 2 extra elimination finals really. And he says it would make it more exciting in those last few rounds and all that sort of stuff. And I get all that, and I know they're going to make more money for broadcasters and all that, and it'd be fun for you and I because we'd be able to bag out and everything. But to me, it is just at what point do you start? Like, you start having more teams in the finals than not in the finals.
Yeah.
I just look at that and go, like, at some point you have to say this is the cutoff. And I just think the idea of having like more teams not making finals than not is where I think it gets completely stupid.
Coaches will play to finish 10th, but then peak for that round or something, you know.
Yeah, and also the week off has often been found. Like, you get a week off, then you play the next week and win, and you then go through and get another week off. That's often been shown to be as disruptive as it is good. Like, it's not always having playing only 2 games in a month is actually not an advantage.
And supporters will be cynical about the whole thing, and I just can't.
So I'm less of a view of it. I can't. Well, I think one thing, the last few rounds are interesting of who's going to get in, and the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the last 3-4 rounds. Yeah. That's where the competition between those places that you might be able to sneak in, who sneaks in, who sneaks out.
And draft picks and who finishes the bottom. And, But I'd bring in a raffle for the draft
like
picks.
a lottery like in the NBA. Yeah, but to me, right...
Before I brought in this wildcard round.
But the thing for me with all of that too is, realistically, they're trying to fix a problem you can't fix, which is no one is going to want to... You can't make Carlton versus Gold Coast exciting in round 20. You just can't. It's just not going to be exciting. Like, it has always been thus and always will. Like, it gets the end of
a problem that doesn't exist.
Fans know that it's like that, Like, it's just... that's the way it works.
It's a dud game. You're going to get them.
Yeah, you're going to get dead rubbers in every sport. And this creating a fake kind... I mean, I also think
it's got the AFL written all over it.
Well, it's like the conference system in the AFLW. The fact that you've got like teams that would not have finished, in the top 4 in a 10-team comp, teams that would have finished sort of like, I can't remember what it was Adelaide versus Carlton in the final one. Carlton would have finished like 5th, 6th or something on the ladder, playing off and then getting annihilated. Like, you get a team that, I know they would have to win all the way through, but a team that finishes 10th goes through and wins the grand final. I mean, it's just so stupid. Or makes it through and then it's just rewarding mediocrity, which is sort of just AFL. Like,
is this another one of those ideas floated that I think will never, ever see the light of day?
I have no...
But then when we assume that...
and then AFLX happens. I thought AFLX would never happen. Yeah. I mean, the first time I heard that idea, I thought, well, this is a waste of time. Sean Brennan wrote in, can we ban Kiss Cam and all the other knockoffs of it across Australia and replace it with Hawk Cam, as in Bob Hawk, where the big screen hones in on one unsuspecting member of the crowd who has to neck the rest of their beer?
I think we should introduce this on one condition.
Yeah.
It has to be out of a yard glass.
And everyone has to have a yard glass.
Not a plastic cup.
I'm for any promotion that encourages drinking.
Absolutely.
Alistair Wattrit wrote in, if Brisbane had a higher score at the end of the game than Fremantle did, this was a cracking game, by the way, would they have won the game? I think Alistair's an AFL exec.
Oh, yeah.
He raises a good point, though. Like, he must be a stats man. He must work at Championship Data.
Champion Data.
Champion Data. Yeah. God, haven't they been appalling in some of their decisions?
They're up there with Newspoll at the moment, Champion Data.
Melbourne has the best list in the comp.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing when... I remember when they published that list and West Coast were like 10th, who'd just won the premiership, and Melbourne were 1. And I said, something critical about it. And someone wrote to me and said, you don't understand, they're not measuring the best team, they're measuring the best list. And I was like, even if that is true, and I get what you're saying, and I get that's what they mean, to be so far wrong means your stats are absolutely meaningless. It still means that your statistics, you might be tracking them all and be able to put them in if they are getting it so far wrong.
Oh, exactly.
The idea that Melbourne had the best list, even on paper, was just absurd.
Yeah.
Like, if you can
big assumption.
If you can construct a statistical model that spits out those results, your statistical model is wrong.
Back to the drawing board. Hey, one bit of good news for Melbourne this week. Jordan Lewis has been suspended.
What for?
Belting somebody in the VFL.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You think that's good news? It's unlike Jordan. So rarely.
He actually played very well for Casey.
Well, that's probably his level now.
Yeah, well, that's my point.
Jack Samuel Turner wrote in, a bit personal, Jack, and using all your middle name makes me wonder about you.
It's a 19th century kind of name.
Who is more disappointed, your parents or Melbourne supporters? Bit brutal. He's made a fundamental mistake there, hasn't he?
2 birds, 1 stone.
I was about to say. He's made he's assuming that your parents aren't Melbourne supporters. You can be disappointed in your kids and your club.
Yeah, you can.
Or if you don't have kids, I always said this about. I always say this about Melbourne. I thought I'd have to have kids to be disappointed in a group of people. Who are we going to give the book to?
Very good question.
I think is it your turn to pick, or do you want me to pick?
You pick.
Thanks, mate. I think I'm going to give it to Richard Allen, who pointed out the mistake of calling the round 10 mid-season draft.
Yeah,
should be the not quite mid-season draft. Well done, Richard. You can, if you'd like, DM me or on Facebook or Twitter, send me your your address, and I'll get one out to you. Otherwise, I'll chase you up if you don't even listen to the podcast, which I'm assuming a lot of people who send in questions are in that category.
Let's hope they do.
Do you reckon that's... wonder what percentage of people who send in questions actually listen to the podcast.
Now, that's something for Champion Data to find out.
They'd be right on it. Like, I trust them. All right, we'll be back next week with wrapping up. We're getting into the build-up of the Queen's birthday.
Yeah, and getting to the... And let's run a very close eye over the Shanghai game.
I'll see you next week.